welcome back. A few things to take care of first. The set and the Patreon and the music. I'm having trouble with that. I'm trying not to waste money here. So, as for the theme song, I don't know any musicians, and I'd really like to come up with some kind of theme song that kind of matches the Bard's song, you know what I mean? So, good luck finding a musician who matches the very the minstrel, ye olde medieval style of the of Blind Guardian and whatnot when they're not doing the really hard rock and metal stuff. So if you know anyone who does Renaissance medieval, I don't even know what I'm asking for. I'm really trying to come up with a theme song here, and I've got nothing. The second thing was I was trying to come up with a fitting set or a backdrop, because that was what was promised. And I feel terrible. I haven't come up with anything so far that's kind of better than this. The nerdy book background, because this cost me nothing, and I really want to spend your money on something worthwhile. I had come up with an idea for like kind of a tavern situation or like a castle, and the one thing I'd come up with was like a vacuform background. Basically plastic kind of a thing, and I'd found something like that, except the cost to ship it, I basically would have had to spend like $1,000, because you have to order 10 of them, which would have covered my entire room, which, that's an idea, but again, I'm trying to spend it responsibly, so I'm trying to come up with like a cost-effective solution to create kind of a set back here and kind of create a cool atmosphere. Haven't really come up with anything because I'm not really the most handy guy when it comes to set design and building anything. Trust me, if I do anything more complicated than a hammer and nails, I'm going to hurt myself. So that's where I'm at right now. I do have some. I have props that I've got working. Actually, what's funny is that this is pretty much the only artifact, so to speak, that exists of the Wild Space VHS board game that I know of in existence. This could be anything, you know what I mean? It's literally just like a printed piece of paper on a black cardboard background, Apparently, and I've had this verified by somebody who was, on the production, this was something that was used to, during like a pitch meeting, to pitch the product for TSR, I believe it was. So they made this poster type thing, and, when they're like, this is going to be a game, we're going to make this game, it's a prototype. So this extraordinarily cheap piece of paper and cardboard is a thing that was part of Wild Space. It's like the Dragon Strike thing, you know what I mean? There probably is a prototype of the game, and there probably is a copy of the video that floats around somewhere. I cannot find it. It's probably sitting in a safe or a warehouse or a car trunk somewhere. But yeah, that's probably the coolest thing I have so far when it comes to that. So I'm still working on the set. This is not my forte. I really do want to come up with something cool though. So maybe could be something I could crowdsource here, because you guys have come this far. Maybe you guys can come up with some really cool ideas. That would be kind of awesome, because this is as much your show as it is mine. As is like RPGs. You help create the world as much as the DM does. At least I think so. But on to business. D&D 5th edition, or D&D Next, or I think they're just calling it Dungeons and Dragons. I think they've tried to go, they're just calling it Dungeons and Dragons. Not a good sign, right? As usual, I try not to read other people's reviews, so as not to taint my own. Like Brad Jones in the movies, I usually wait till after I've seen the movie before watching his, and invariably mine differs from his, which is amazing, right? But just by mentioning that I had bought the book on Twitter and saying initially what my opinion was, everyone was like, really? Everyone else loves it. And so I checked, and just from the headlines, pretty much everybody, from a critical everyone who's kind of a critic in this regard, pretty much loves this game. Universally. As always, there's people who don't like it, but this is almost universally a beloved game. I think after 4th edition, it was one of those things where, like, anything was going to be better, which it's kind of remarkable how I've kind of I've become contrarian, and I don't know. I'm not trying to be, where I liked 4th edition for what it was. 4th edition was fine. It was a miniatures war game. Let's not pretend it was anything else. But it was a very newbie-friendly introduction to Dungeons and Dragons. I think people chalked it up as being like it inhibits role playing. It's just a war game. That's all it is. I'm like, no, that's not all it is. You can role play with any system. You can do that with anything. And now it is a very, 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 very heavy, rules heavy miniatures war game. But I found, in terms of introducing players to the concept of a role playing game, what it is, how to play it, what these various races are, every single aspect of a fantasy role playing game, I thought it was perfect. April, who really had not played an RPG ever, didn't know really anything about this stuff, picked it up and is pretty much a natural now. During her first RPG session, pretty much everyone around that table, aside from like one person, had never played an RPG, which is really remarkable how they pulled together that group. And almost everyone picked it up and was pro within a few weeks. So if that says a lot. So I consider that one a success. Whether or not you agree, whether you like the combat system or not, whether you thought it was too heavy or took too long, that's fine. But to call it, I heard a lot of vitriol on that one. Now I do agree that it was, considering it was almost unrecognizable from the D&D that I grew up with. I agree with that, but I wasn't calling like betrayal or anything. Nor am I calling it with this. In fact, this was, this is the story of the 5th edition D&D. Is what is this? What is this? Which is a very, very good question. Is the intentions of the designers when they came up with this game? And it's a complex answer. And I can't speak for them, but judging from the rules, the way the rules are structured, the way it appears to be, and just from what few snippets I've read from the designers themselves, I'll get into that. But the first thing I can tell you is that this game stinks. Literally, the book smells. This is just, allow me to engage in the nitpicking first off. And, well, actually, first of all, if you're going to shut down the video, allow me to give you an excuse right away. I have not played a session of this game. This is if you're going to shut it off for me doing a critique of this game, for not having played the game, I have not played the game, so shut it off now. If you wanted to, if you're going to be like, Spoony, you haven't played the game, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, I haven't, so shut it off. This is just my first impressions from a read-through of the book, which I tried to be as thorough as I could in 24 hours. I got this yesterday. Tried to be as thorough and fast as I could. So here we go. This is the nitpicking section. This book smells. I'm not saying your book smells, but this book stinks. It smells like, when I open it up, it smells like, it still smells. It smells like, you ever have one of those really, really old scratch and sniff stickers? That it doesn't have any, whatever it smelled like before, it doesn't smell like that now, but it has almost like this moldy, dusty smell. That it only has that, it only smells like it when you scratch it really hard, and it just kind of smells like dust. And this, it's not dusty, it's not a dusty book, but it smells like just, it smells like an old scratch and sniff sticker. I haven't smelled that since like 5th grade, and it's really, really pungent. And I want to say it's like mold, but and I don't know what the case is with this. Like, if it was, this may have been legit sitting in a warehouse for a month, and I don't know. And this is like a moldy book, and I should not be waving it into my nose. It might be a byproduct of like the color toner they used in the book. Maybe yours does as well. But yeah, when I fan those pages out, woo, and I'm going to die of like a fungal infection in a month. I don't know. Second, this is me being contrarian again. The art in this book is almost universally praised. I don't like it. Well, that's not fair to say. Is I like some of it. I like parts of it. What kills me about it is the inconsistency. So, for instance, there's some art that I rather like. It's actually very it harkens back to the old style of D&D, which, again, I'm gonna call back to this. They are trying to call back to the older style of D&D many times. So there's kind of paintings and illustrations like this that very much look like that. And for the most part, the artists that try to replicate that, this very soft focus painting style of illustration, is very successful and very well done. I'm trying to let me just come up with some examples of this. Things like this very much harken back to those the old AD&D 2nd edition modules. Really close. Which those games had. That game had a very varied art style from several different artists, but somehow they all still kind of followed a theme. You know, obviously they followed a theme, but what I'm trying to say is they were different, but they all felt like they belonged together. There was nothing really that, at least in my rose-colored glasses remembering, that really clashed, so to speak. Then there's some that really look too modern, that are like really sharp focused, very comic book. That's a closer example. See, this one's kind of a soft focus one. That's very nostalgic looking. That's cool. This one, very soft focus, very cool looking. I like that. And they blend together well. The layout is really rather good. You know, it blends together with the text. Really couldn't ask for better than that. Trying to find a... I'll show you what really offended me in a second. Ooh, that's bad. I don't know if it's one artist in particular. It might have been. But whoever it is needs to be just destroyed. This one's very classic. This one really reminds me of ye olden days. This barroom brawl scene really reminds me of the old AD&D books. Okay, I'll just show you the one that fucking horrified me early. I don't know what it is, if it's one artist, or if they've just decided that they hate halflings and gnomes. But almost every instance of halflings and gnomes, they have depicted them as some freakish, inverted triangle-shaped marionette creatures with little dangly, spindly legs and gigantic freak show heads. What the fuck is this? Look at this! Look at the size of his head and the size of his feet. This is just grotesque. This is horrible. Even in the olden days, when you would look at pictures of, the Hobbit, when the Hobbit would have this ginormous nose, and they were kind of meant to look gnome-shaped, this one's worse. like, look how, like, wide apart his feet are, and look how tiny they are. Like, his little boots. This is just astoundingly bad. So it's every single instance in which they appear. It's staggering how bad this artist is. Yeah. And sometimes there's art like this that almost seems recycled from 4th edition. In fact, probably was. That it's well done, but just looks too modern. It clashes with the art style of the much more pleasant art style of the newer edition. Again, nitpick, admittedly so, but it really is kind of about, 60-40 of the art I liked and the art that really clashed. That's that's pretty much it when it comes to the layout of it. The second thing is I did not like the cover. This really didn't scream, especially in terms of, like, if you're going flashback, if you're going nostalgic. Okay, and I'll just get to this. The way this book is supposedly written, the way the rules are structured, I think the mission statement for D&D 5th edition was that they were trying to... I think there were two main goals. One was they were trying to kind of bring it back, make this Dungeons and Dragons again, to appeal to the hardcore fans, to appeal to the old schoolers, and still make it new. So to make it nostalgic and update it at the same time, if that makes sense. Because it doesn't to me. to basically update it, but make it appear to use the imagery and terminology and the feel of advanced Dungeons and Dragons, but make it feel like an updated version of 3.5, maybe. Basically, I think they're trying to really cut ties with 4th, almost like retcon 4th, as much as they can. Some things are still there, like the Dragonborn. Some things are not, like the Eladrin, which, thank Corellin for that. They've cut the Eladrin entirely. Here's the thing with the Eladrin. I think I know what they were going for. If you don't know what the Eladrin are, the Eladrin are supposed, like, I called them super elves. They're elves, but they're elves from the Feywild. The Feywild being the fairy realm. So basically, where the Great Hunt comes from, where the Sidhe come from, the summer court and the winter court of the fairies. So the Eladrin are elves that come from there, and they're like high elves, the really snooty socialist, not social, but high-class social structured, socialist, high-class social structure elves who are very intellectual, the stereotypical wizard elves, whereas in the 4th edition, the standard elves are more the wood elves, the foresty elves, the hippies. And I think they were I think what they were going for with the Eladrins is, I think what they wanted to do was put fairies in as a player class. And that's fine. I actually like that idea. In fact, Hackmaster made Pixie Fairies a class, which was great. The problem is, I think they couldn't get around the fact that that fairies are tiny. And it fucks up everything and makes it... You have to basically spend an entire chapter just explaining how to make tiny creatures work with their equipment and stuff like that. And people would bitch about how they're unbalanced and how useless a pixie or a pixie fairy fighter would be, or a rogue. And I'd be like, yep. So, well, just make it work, so don't play one. And this is the problem. This is part of my problem when it comes to players these days, these kids these days, is you're a bunch of whiny pussies. Everything has to be balanced now, doesn't it? It's like, let's say we put forth the fairies as a race, a player race in this book. a lot of people would bitch. They'd be like, how is this balanced? This is crazy. What if I wanted to play a pixie barbarian? That wouldn't even be fair. He wouldn't do any damage. I'd be like, then don't play a pixie barbarian. That's stupid. You could, I'm sure they exist, but they would fight mainly other pixie tribes or something, like, you know. But it's not to say you couldn't play a fairy rogue or something like that. They would just be good in different ways. You wouldn't look for one. You know, it'd be hard to see. They're tiny. Probably be a pretty good assassin. Stab him in the spine, you know. But balance is still very much a focus here. Everything is so well balanced. Anyway, that was the Eladrin. They're gone. And yet, some things remain. The Dragonborn remain. And I still don't know why the Dragonborn are still here. They seem so strange to me. Very much not an old school concept, by the way. Very much new school, introduced in 4th edition. Very much just ramrodded into the game right out of nowhere in 4th edition. If you're a Forgotten Realms player or a fan, I have no idea how you ever got past this. This was the biggest bullshit. What they had them do, this is what happened in 4th edition, and I probably went over this, but like, what happened was a meteor hit Farron. Hit it so hard it caused like a rift in the space-time continuum, and shit spilled through, including the Dragonborn. So like there was a merging of the realities, and then there was just Dragonborn here now. A race of dragon people. And so get used to it, because they're a player race now. It was the biggest hand-wavy bullshit. But it happened. Oh well. You're like, why did you have to do that? You know, just if you're gonna do that, define a new realm. But we couldn't do that because we're gonna have organized play. You know, we didn't want to get rid of Forgotten Realms because it's such a great cash cow. And I can get that, but it's still just half-orcs. Half-orcs is another one. I have no idea why they're such a ubiquitous race now. Every book, even Pathfinder, which is my favorite RPG that's being published today, half-orcs are standard. I don't get it. Are there really that many half-orcs running around that they're just... They're mentioned in the same breath as every other like standard race. There's humans, elves, half-elves, gnomes, half-orcs. Why do they got to be standard? Like, oh man, I don't know. There's so many other races, in fact, I would name over half-orcs that would be standard. Like, I get that you want to make like a brute race that, you know, you want to have a barbarian race that... Racist, by the way. You want to have a race that would plug in kind of naturally stereotypically with the barbarians. So I'm like, okay. You want half-orcs that'd be natural barbarians. Still, I don't care. How many... So we've got these things. Tieflings, too. I'm really tempted to let Tieflings go because they're one of my favorite races in Planescape. They kind of made them standard. But they're not the Tieflings I grew up with. They're still not the same Tieflings. What really took the cake was the Drow. Drow are a standard race in this. You want to talk unbalanced. But what I really want to talk about is the examples that they give in the race, the breakdowns of all the races. Basically what they do is for every race, like, by the way, they don't give any examples for the Dragonborn, but and I'm curious to see what they did for halflings, because I didn't look that closely. Let's see. There's the part where I read the book to you. Okay, yeah. So for half-elf, for instance, the example they give you is Tanis Half-Elven from Dragonlance, which right away seemed a strange choice to me. I know Dragonlance is Dungeons & Dragons property, but I didn't think it was one of those things where they were taking it that seriously, or that kind of front line. They published they published like a campaign setting for it, but that was it. They published one book. Now it seems to be front line. They mention it a lot. I really think it's going to be one of the two primary, because every example they give, there's two examples they give. One is Forgotten Realms, the second is Dragonlance. So I think they're really helming Realms and Dragonlance as the two. That seems very strange to me. So, really surprising. Where's Halflings? Alphabetical, you dipshit. Or is it? It is. Halflings. Okay. So I think I remember seeing them mention Tasselhoff Burrfoot in this, which is hilarious. Okay. In this one, they mentioned Regis the Halfling from the Crystal Shard, Drizzt Do'Urden. Let's see. Okay, Lightfoot Halflings. In the world of Greyhawk, they mentioned Greyhawk. These are called Hairfeet or Tallfellows. And Stout Halflings in Forgotten Realms, they're called Stronghearts. Do they mention Tasselhoff? Okay, no, I was mistaken. I'm amazed they didn't. Wow, okay. Come on, they had to have. I know I saw the name. I know they mentioned the word Wanderlust at least. Male names. Good Barrel. Okay. I'm amazed they didn't mention Kender for as much as... Actually, why didn't they? And I'll tell you why now. They put Drow Elves in here. Okay? And the only reason they put Drow Elves in here is because of Drizzt Do'Urden. Because you basically cannot play a Drow Elf in Dragonlance. You just can't. For various reasons I don't want to get into. The short answer is the Kinslayer War. It won't happen. You're not going to play a Drow without extremely good backstory. Which could happen, but it won't happen. But it says, were it not for one renowned exception, the race of Drow would be universally reviled. To most, they are a race of demon-worshipping marauders dwelling in the subterranean depths of the Underdark. Their society is depraved and preoccupied with the favor of Lolth, the spider goddess. Yet one Drow, at least, broke the mold. Drizzt Do'Urden, Ranger of the North. So basically they admit that the only reason they put Drow in this game is because Drizzt Do'Urden fanboyism. There's Wood Elves and there's Drow Elves. And High Elves. But they also ramrodded Drow Elves in here. Everything else gets like 2 entries. Drow. Yeah. But, by the way, you basically shouldn't play Drow Elves in any of these games that we mentioned. But they're here because they're cool. And you should swing 2 scimitars, too. So just play Drizzt. You know, it's easier that way. But don't play it in Dragonlance, for fuck's sake. Don't ever do it. But play a freakishly headed halfling bard. That's cool. With little tiny feet. Oh my god. Or is that a gnome? I don't even fucking know. Looks like a halfling. Gnomes apparently stereotypically have huge noses. My god. And then they do this thing where they kind of steal White Wolf from White Wolf games, where they mention a stereotypical member of a race's opinion of every other member of a stereotypical member of the race. So, like, a human's opinion of a dwarf. They're stout folk, stalwart friends, and true to their word. Their greed for gold is their downfall. They do that for, like, Vampire of every other clan. I don't know. I guess it's okay. It tells you how to roleplay. It seems silly to me. What bothered me about that, not that specific part. What bothered me about the examples Where I think this is not well done is, let's say I'm completely new to this. Let's say that I'm April before I learned any of this stuff. I don't know anything about D&D. I don't know any of this shit. That I pick this book up and I'm like, what's a paladin? Let's say I don't know. And I open it up and let me see if there's an example for that. Let me see what's a paladin. I wonder if it does examples of that in the literature the same way it does the races, because that I don't know. This is really curious to me now. Interestingly, no, it doesn't. It doesn't give usually in the races it gives a quotation block from a book, like the R.A. Salvatore novels. Not here. At least not that I see so far. Maybe it references, at least gives a reference to something, an example of it in another book. It does not. I mean, it tells you what it is. Clad in plate armor that gleams in the sunlight despite the dust and grime of long travel. It doesn't actually tell you. It tells you what his hair is like. Listen to this. This sounds like a J. Crew advertisement for a paladin. It sounds like what you would do if you were describing a paladin like a pair of pants. Clad in plate armor that gleams in the sunlight despite the dust and grime of long travel, a human lays down her sword and shield and places her hands on a mortally wounded man. Divine radiance shines from her hands, the wounds knit closed, and his eyes open wide with amazement. The paladin double-breasted suit. Only $69.99. A dwarf crouches behind an outcrop, his black cloak making him nearly invisible in the night, and watches an orc band celebrating its recent victory. Silently he stalks into their midst and whispers an oath, and 2 orcs are dead before they realize he's even there. It takes 3 paragraphs before they even start to mention what the fuck a paladin is. Okay, here. Whatever their origin and their mission, paladins are united by their oaths to stand against the forces of evil. Whether sworn before a god's altar and the witness of a priest, in a sacred glade before nature spirits and fey beings, or in a moment of desperation and grief with the dead as the only witness, a paladin's oath is a powerful bond. It is a source of power that turns a devout warrior into a blessed champion. That is a terrible definition. That is terrible. Give me a second. I'm sorry, that sucked. I gotta know. And I'm gonna justify this in a second. Let's see. Classes. I'm gonna see what this tells me what a paladin is. And this is this book is organized weird. It organizes them by group. There's fighter groups, rogue groups, and whatever. Priest, cleric, druid. They're so not alphabetical. This is part of why the 2nd edition D&D was a mess. I can't find anything. God damn it. First sentence. This is the first sentence under paladin. And that's what he looks like. This, by the way, this is what they think a paladin looks like. A horrible, angled, roaring, well, let's just say it, evil-looking bastard, just roaring in vengeance. This does not look like a good guy. I know that's racist, but, this does not look like a holy warrior to me. He looks fucking pissed. This guy looks like a dork, but let's face it, that's a paladin. Paladins are dorks. That guy looks like a berserker, man. Let's face it, when you think of a paladin, you think of a dork and plate mail you want to slap. Doesn't that look like a guy you want to slap? Does to me. Okay, so, first sentence under the entry of a paladin. I'm just saying. The paladin is a noble and heroic warrior, the symbol of all that is right and true in the world. As such, he has high ideals that he must maintain at all times. Throughout legend and history, there are many heroes who could be called paladins. Roland and the 12 Peers of Charlemagne, Sir Lancelot, Sir Gawain, and Sir Galahad are all examples of the class. However, many brave and heroic soldiers have tried and failed to live up to the ideals of the paladin. It's not an easy task. This took 4 paragraphs to try to get into any kind of point. And I still don't know. If I didn't know shit about what a paladin was, I still don't. Like, it tells me that they're a devout warrior and a blessed champion. But I'm like, what? That... Okay. I guess I can put... I guess I can put 2 and 2 together. But, like, that doesn't tell me... I don't know that... It doesn't tell me, like, code of honor. It doesn't tell me... really, code of honor. Like, it doesn't tell me that they're, you know, pure of heart, pure of spirit, that they're pricks. You know what I mean? Like, it really doesn't tell me what I need to know at first glance. And it certainly doesn't tell me right up front. You know, it really is unclear. The fact that if I am... someone who is new at this. And let's face it, if I'm trying to get into D&D, this is the sort of thing that, you know, I'm not sure about it. People are trying to get me into this, and, you know, they're nerds, and I'm going to get frustrated really easily, because this isn't my thing, you know? They got funny shaped dice, and I don't know anything about D&D, and I don't know anything about this fucking Tolkien shit, and then they make me read this. And I'm like, I don't... 3 paragraphs in, they're talking about silver hair shining in a shaft of light. I don't know, man. What the fuck is... Meanwhile, this goes, he's a holy warrior. You know, like, cool! That's all I'm saying. So, my second... But where I was going with this was the examples of, say, same scenario. Let's say I don't know what a gnome is. And that's not an unfair... That's not unfair, again. Because when you think gnome, you think lawn gnome. If I don't know anything about the literature, and not everyone who plays D&D is familiar with the fucking literature. So why do they keep using references from literature to constantly illustrate what these guys are? Especially, and I'll just say it, they keep using relatively obscure examples of literature. And I know Drizzt is not that obscure, but from someone who's a newbie, from the perspective of someone who's a newbie, it's kind of obscure. Especially Dragonlance. I mean, I read Dragonlance in junior high. I know this shit, but I guarantee you anyone who's even remotely a newbie doesn't know this shit. So, you know, if I'm reading this, and the best example of a half-elf they can come up with is Tanis Half-Elven, and I'm supposed to know who that is? Like, oh, yeah. And I know there's no really good examples of drow other than Drizzt Do'Urden in literature. Fair enough. Then don't fucking include them as a standard race. That's something you gotta... They should not be a standard race. You know, for halflings, why do you gotta use Regis the Halfling from R.A. Salvatore's The Crystal Shard? Wouldn't it make much more sense to use Bilbo fucking Baggins? Is it because you don't... Is it because you haven't, like, licensed him from the Tolkien estate? That's probably why. But, again, this seems like nitpicking, but from introducing to a newbie, I don't think it is. Now, I'm sure I'm going to get all sorts of stuff where I'm like, I showed this to a newbie, and in 4 minutes, we were fighting Balrogs. Whatever. I'm just telling you, if I were to show this to a newbie, I don't think this would happen. I think they would get confused. I think they would not know who the fuck... Because this is the first thing that happens. This is the first shit that shows up, this quote, when it comes to a dwarf. You know, and I'm guessing they relatively know what a dwarf is, but when it comes to half-elves, when it comes to halflings, when it comes to especially anything that's not really, really commonly known you've got to be right up front with this. Otherwise, people are going to get frustrated. And I think a lot of other games were really... I'm just going to try to go right back to this one and see if it was much clearer. Although, interestingly, this one, I think, opens up... Nope. Let's see. Dwarves. Dwarves are short, stocky fellows, easily identified by their size and shape. They average 4 to 4.5 feet tall. They have ruddy cheeks, dark eyes, and dark hair. They generally live for 350 years. They tend to be dour and taciturn. Half-elves are the most common mixed-race beings. The relationship between elf, human, and half-elf is defined as follows. Okay, so let's see. It seems like I'm obsessing. This is important, I think. Okay, dwarves. Here's dwarves. Let's ignore the paragraph from the Crystal Shard. Kingdoms rich in ancient grandeur, halls carved into the roots of mountains, the echoings of picks and hammers in deep mines and blazing forges, a commitment to clan and tradition, a burning hatred of goblins and orcs. Are you ever going to get to a subject in this sentence? Or, actually, this is all one subject. I'm talking about a verb, really. Yeah. After an entire paragraph that combines to one subject, there we go. These common threads unite all dwarves. We still have not talked about what a dwarf is. Second column, we talk about what they are. Now, that's useful information. It's illustrative as to what they want. You know, what the stereotypical dwarf kind of lives for. But, I don't know. You're going to jump on me. I know. Okay. So, I took notes from what I didn't like. Let's see, how to start. I will talk about what is generally good about this one. Because I was reading a little bit about... I came down on this one really negatively. And when I saw that people were almost universally praising it, I wanted to know why. So I kind of slept on it at first, and I thought about it before I read anything. And I wanted to rethink things. Because if my first thought was, maybe I'm really knee-jerk reacting to this one because it's different and I don't like things that are different. Maybe I hate everything. Maybe, this is coming from the perspective of somebody who is old and compares everything to this, or is someone who is very defensive of Pathfinder or something like that. A couple things. One, that's not true. None of those things are true. Two, I never held this up as the gold standard to role-playing games. This game is a mess. As I just illustrated, trying to find the classes I was talking about is horrible. Trying to find the paladin, they're not alphabetical, because they're organized by group. There's the fighter group, rogue group, and spellcasting group. Or I think it's... Actually, I don't even know what the groups are. What group are they? Oh, warrior, wizard, priest, and rogue. Which, by the way, are also not alphabetically organized. So, the first group is warrior, which is the fighter, ranger, and paladin. The paladin is not in the priest group. They're a warrior group, which, okay, makes sense. But you have to remember that. So you have to flip through the warrior group, then the wizard group, then the priest group, then the rogue group. And by the way, the bard is the rogue group. Because otherwise the rogue group would consist entirely of the thief. So the thief is last. There is no wizard, there is the mage. The wizard is the group. See, it's a mess. And that's just one of many, 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 many issues that people have. Things like THAC0, 2-hit AC0. I've seen people get thrown by THAC. I've seen veterans of the game for 12 years still not fully understand what THAC0 is, or still have problems trying to calculate it in their heads. You know, something that complicated is not good. So I've never held that up to be like, this game is perfect. Never said that. What I'm saying is, there's a reason why I like it so much, and there's a reason why it's kind of held up to be the gold standard of D&D. There's a reason why people remember it so fondly. And, you know, there's a reason why people hold on to all those books like they're so precious. Even though it's a mess. And the reason is, it's the best kind of mess. It's hard to explain, but I compare it to when your bedroom is a mess. But it's your mess. You know where everything is. You know, you like it that way. You know, it's a mess, but I like it that way. It's just messy enough. You know, it's in a lot of ways it's not good. You know, it's unbalanced as hell. I never said it was balanced. But that's the best part of it, really. Part of it is you had to dive in head first into this game. And I think that's part of what really illustrates, the one thing that really illustrates the difference between this and this, is I think it really illustrates the difference between players today and players back then. And me and you, if you're watching this and you're a lot younger than I am. And it illustrates the disconnect, I think, when people are just going to shake their head at me and not understand where I'm coming from. You know, when I say things like this. When they go like, what? How can you think this is fun? Or, you know, when I say things like, I still prefer to roll my characters randomly. They'll be like, how can you say something like that? How is that fun? It's because you're a whiner. That's it. And it's because when I play games like this, things weren't balanced, and you had to learn, you know, it's not fair, and it's like life isn't fair, and the game's not fair, but the thing is, it is fair. It's just not fair enough where you're like, okay, it made sense to me. You know, it made sense to a lot of people. So, meaning, like, it required teamwork. You had strengths and you had weaknesses, and those weaknesses were dire. And this is a fair comparison. I'm going to keep coming back to this, because the game itself invites these comparisons, because it itself is trying to be nostalgic to it. It is mirroring itself in a way after this edition. So these comparisons are entirely fair. It is not trying to be this edition, but it's trying to bring players like me into the fold. So I'm trying to tell you how it's doing, and why it's working and why it's not. So players had weaknesses and players had strengths, and it was about teamwork and overcoming that. So there was balancing factors in that. For instance, wizards. Wizards had a spell. We had one. We had one per day. If you were a specialist wizard, you had 2. That was it. In this version, you have, let's just say, I don't know how many. It depends on what spellcasting class you are, of which there's about 6 now. And you have really infinite. But you have a lot more. You can cast cantrips now, which are 0-level spells. Cantrips do not exist in this. 0-level spells, which you can cast at will, which means as many times as you want, as often as you want. And destructive spells, offensive spells, as many times as you want. Right off the bat, I got a problem with that. But, and cantrips, by the way, are one of the most unbalanced things in this game. You want to talk balance. For instance, I immediately knee-jerked in disgust at the cantrips. And I think any DM who starts playing this for any even limited period of time is going to grow to hate spellcasters for unbalancing the game. Here's why. Remember, cantrips can be cast at will. So let me go over a few cantrips. I did not mark them down. However, it won't be hard to find some that are just outright broken. So, cantrips. 201. And when I tell you what they're like, you will know, it won't be hard to see why. Okay, so, Sorcerer, which are primarily just burninate things, and Wizards, and Warlocks. I want to play the Warlock. Okay, so let's say Acid Splash. Okay, Acid Splash. At will, by the way. Anything within range of 60 feet. Choose one creature within range or two creatures within range that are within 5 feet of one another. So any two adjacent creatures. Target must succeed a dexterity saving throw or take 1d6 acid damage. That hurts. But that's a mild one. Let's see. That's like really minor. Poison Spray. This one sounds yummy, doesn't it? Poison Spray. This one was my favorite, I believe. Okay. Range 10 feet. It's basically a burning hand spell, like an arc, in front of you. You extend your hand towards a creature you can see within range, and project a puff of noxious gas from your palm. Oh, it's not a, but still. The creature must succeed on a Constitution saving throw, or take 1d12 poison damage. This is a cantrip. At will. I feel the need to stress this. No spell components. Duration, instantaneous. Instantaneous. Yeah. The only downside is you need to be within 10 feet. Whatever. Then there's, I believe, Flame Bolt. Love this one. Firebolt? Should be it. Yeah. Firebolt. Range 120 feet. You hurl a mote of fire at a creature or object within range. Make a ranged spell attack against the target. On a hit, it takes 1d10 fire damage. A flammable object hit by the spell ignites if it is not being worn or carried. 1 to 10. Within 120 feet. Range increment. If you can see it, you can burn it. But yeah, I do love the Poison Spray. It automatically hits, just requires a saving throw. This is amazing. We go from having one spell a day to throwing arcs of poison at will. You guys are coddled. You guys, this isn't even like walking uphill in the snow both ways. This is ridiculous. I don't even want to... You want to talk about balance. I didn't even look at the other cantrips. I was so horrified. Ray of Frost, Shocking Grasp. Honestly, I really want to see these now. Ray of Frost. I bet it's the same as Flame Bolt, really, but... Ray of Sickness. Range spell attack within 60 feet on a hit takes 1d8, and speed is reduced by 10 feet. until the start of the next turn. Okay. Okay. Shocking Grasp. Lightning springs from your hand to deliver a shock to a creature you try to touch. Make a melee spell attack. You have advantage on the attack roll if the target is wearing armor made of metal. I'll tell you about advantage in a second. On a hit, the target takes 1d8 lightning damage and can't take reactions until the start of his next turn. Oh! Cute. Reactions are they attacks of opportunity? I don't know. Probably. True Strike. I don't know. Is it the same thing as before? Probably. True Strike. True Stride? That's not it. Is that a typo? Oh, Tree Stride. I read good. You extend your hand and point your finger at a target like Hulk Hogan. On your next turn, you gain advantage on your first attack roll, provided the spell hasn't ended. Ooh, a wizard's gonna hit me. Scary. Okay. Advantage. This is another thing I fucking hate. The second thing that I believe the mission statement, not sure, but I believe one of the main goals of D&D was to make it faster. Way faster. And to do that, they had to make it simpler. Way simpler. And to that end, they've achieved it. Oh my god, they've achieved it. They have really slashed a lot of content out of this game. So much so that, again, I think their inspiration was essentially first edition Dungeons and Dragons, like right out of the first version of it ever, Chainmail. You know, the version right after that, where there was almost no rules. I think they were basically trying to cut out all the rules. Mission accomplished. To the point where I was really astounded at how vague and cryptic, not cryptic, but how vague and just undefined everything was, which was their goal. And then when I started thinking about it, I understood why, and it was for speed, and it was for expediency, and it does that well. And I'll tell you why I don't like it in a second. But yes, if you're looking to move the game along a lot faster, you will get that. One thing they were definitely trying to move away from was the grid, moving pieces around on a mat. So, 4th edition took place entirely on a mat. It was a miniatures war game. You could not play it without the mat. Probably could, but no, you couldn't. Because without templates, no, you couldn't play without it, because it was all about movement, all about flanking and shit like that. This game abstracts all of that out, to the point where I don't even know why they put things like movement speeds, because you're not using it. I guess just in general, like marching speed, marching over the course of a day. I guess that's why. I mean, they kind of throw in like a throwaway line about if you want to use squares, I guess you can. But whatever. But yeah, basically they're taking out the map, which, one, I'll tell you why I don't like it. I like the map. Even when I played this version, I used my vinyl rollout map. I still have that map. That's when I bought it. That map is still... I bought that map probably in 1998. Still have it. Still use it. This game had map rules from an expansion. Never used them. You could... I think you could use it by using a ruler or something like that. Never used it. We just use it as a player aid. You can still do that with this. I think that's if there's ever a way you're going to do it with the rules as written at the moment, it would just be as a visual aid, which is fine. But yeah, you need to get used to that, because my knee-jerk reaction was violent. I hit myself in the face. I was like, no, map, yeah!
Is it